All right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to our launch and giveaway party for my new book that's just come out, Overcoming Estrogen Dominance, a book that's been in the works for like solidly the past 2 years, but really is probably 10 years of my life and my own personal experience and working with hundreds and dozens of women that went into this book. So we are on day 3 today and day 4, actually, day 4 today. And every day is dedicated to something else. We've got stuff for you for, we started off the first day, we talked about what is estrogen dominance, and then we've had a lot of really cool stuff on exercise, we were talked about breast health. And so every day there's a great video, a set of videos for you, interviews with experts. I would love to invite you to go to overcomingestrogendominance.com/events. That's the URL, and Gina's gonna post it. And that's where you can view all those videos that you might have missed in the past. Today, what I would like to talk to you about is the whole day we've actually dedicated towards heavy periods and PMSs. Something that a lot of women struggle with, and even when you're going through perimenopause, which most of our audience are women who are perimenopause, going into menopause, you might still be having your period, and it might be getting kind of crazy, irregular. Maybe you have a history of having terrible PMS. Certainly that was my story. And then heavy periods is something that also a lot of women, even when you're going towards perimenopause, are suffering from. So I'd love to talk to you today about what's causing that, which is the underlying cause of all of that is estrogen dominance. And in today's video, I would love to show you a couple of simple recipes that use the power of herbs to really help you manage your periods in a sensible, gentle way, without perhaps going on birth control pills, because that's Western medicine's way of dealing with PMSs, is putting women on birth control, even if they don't want to be on contraceptives. So I'm going to be showing you 2 recipes today. One, we're going to be making a PMS drink, which is going to be infused with some really wonderful herbs. And I'll show you those herbs in a second. And then I also want to show you how do you make a PMS Salve, just something that you can really easily make on your own stove, and we're going to go through that. So actually, before I dive into that, I want to just share with you one of the first recipes, because I'm recording this first thing in the morning. And so one of the first recipes that I was showing a few days ago was our Good Morning Elixir. And that's one of the recipes, one of the base recipes here in Overcoming Estrogen Dominance that I really want to encourage you and inspire you to start off with this recipe as first thing in the morning, not with a cup of coffee that will acidify your body and set you up for blood sugar imbalance, is going to spike up your cortisol levels, but something that's highly anti-inflammatory, something that will prepare your digestion for breakfast, warms you up on the inside, is highly anti-inflammatory. As you can see from the color, it's got turmeric in it, and it's got ginger, it's got lime or lemon. So I'm just gonna have a quick shot before I dive into all the other videos. Okay, now, so the first thing we're gonna do, actually we're gonna start off with our, I wanna show you how to use different herbs to make a really wonderful latte. And we are in time of the year that latte might be something that you really love, because it's a little bit colder right now. I'm in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, and so it tends to get a little bit cold even in spring, and we are filming this during springtime. And I think latte is something that is just so wonderful to have any time of the year. So the few herbs that we're going to be working with, I'd love to introduce you to, is going to be, actually, let me just show you in the book itself. I'm going to be using herbs that I mentioned in the chapters. So I'm pulling them out from chapter 15 of the book, which talks about dysmenorrhea and PMS. And towards the end of the chapter, there is a section that talks about implementing herbal strategies. Now, these herbs can be delivered in various ways. You can work with an herbalist to create a concoction for you, that you might be putting that into pills, dried herbs that are put into pills. It might be a tincture that perhaps an herbalist can put together for you. or it's something you can make at home as a latte. And that's really what I want to inspire you and show you just how simple it is. I think there is, there's kind of like, it's a little bit labor intensive to be making this, although you can prepare a little batch and have it for days to come. But I feel like whenever you're making something of your own, it's like, it's that special intention that you put into that herb and into the medicine that you're making. And I do feel like it has higher potential of having medicinal benefits and healing powers as compared to something you just buy off the shelf and you buy on Amazon and you just pop a pill. And whether it's placebo or whether it's just the power of intention, who cares? The point is that it works when you do something yourself. So I'm wondering how many of you here are making your own herbal products at home. And also one thing I forgot to mention, that we are doing a book giveaway on this call. And the way we do this is that I'm gonna quiz you somewhere towards like end-ish of this video and ask you a question of something that I talked about at the video, and whoever gets it right is gonna get a copy of the book. So, under the herbal strategies in that chapter, I've divided the herbs into a few categories. The first one is the hormonal modulators. We have chasteberry, also known as Vitex. It's a wonderful herb that helps you boost your progesterone levels. Dong Quai, which is also known as Angelica sinensis, ginger, and black cohosh. And then for liver support, so if you have been following me for a while, you know that the liver is super important in estrogen detoxification. We have dandelion root, burdock root, and then we have analgesics, which are basically the kind of like painkillers. And there's creme bark, and then we have kava kava. And then we also have adaptogens and nervines, especially for those of you feel like your PMS gets worse when you're really stressed out. You're going through a really difficult time in your life. And then your PMS, your period issues are becoming a lot more difficult. Then is it time to also consider adding a few other herbs such as ashwagandha, schizandra, rhodiola, urethro, skullcap, milk oats, or passion flower. All wonderful herbs. So today I want to work with a few herbs just to show you, when you pick up the book, right, and you've got all these herbs mentioned here, the question is, what do you do with them? And sure, you can make that into, you can get a pill or work with an herbalist to make a tincture for you. But I want to show you, like, if you want to culinarily add these herbs into your life, how easy that is to do so. So today we're going to work with a couple of herbs. The first one I've chosen is creme bark. So like I mentioned, creme bark is the one that will help you with pain, and if you're experiencing pain during PMS. It's also a relaxer on the uterus. We're going to be working with black cohosh, which is a wonderful hormonal balancer. And it's interesting because a lot of people think of black cohosh as being great for hot flashes, women with hot flashes. That's true, but it also works with women with PMSs. And then we've got Vitex, which is a wonderful berry from a shrub. Vitex in Germany is prescribed for women who have PMSs, infertility problems, miscarriages, in order to, if low progesterone is the cause of their issues, then Vitex is the first go-to herb that's prescribed in Germany, covered by insurance. How about that, right? Quite amazing. And then we also have ginger, and I'm going to be using ginger because it's nicely warming. When you have a lot of pain, you want, like when you put a hot pat on your tummy kind of a thing, and it creates a form of a relief. The same way, ginger can be a really wonderful warming herb that just brings all of those herbs together. So, and also, a lot of herbs are also cooling. So we always want to balance them out with herbs that are slightly warming. And that's exactly what ginger is bringing in. Now, I'm going to show you what to do with them in just a second. But the carrier of all of this is going to be almond milk. And that's something that I just made this morning. As you can see, it started, maybe you can see that on the camera, but it started separating, which is perfectly normal. If you wonder how to make your own almond milk instead of buying it from a store, which is always full of, they have to put, a bunch of chemicals in it, including additives and such binders, because otherwise they will separate or go bad. That's inevitable when you buy stuff in a box. But you can make this yourself. And I have a whole ton of videos on our Facebook channel on how to make plant-based milk. So take a look at that if that's of interest to you. So let's start off with, that's going to be what we're going to be infusing our herbs into, okay? So I'm going to put this aside for a second. And I'm using a really simple grinder. Let me reorganize my counter here. Now, I don't use a coffee grinder because coffee, first of all, I don't drink coffee, but the other thing is that coffee kind of overtakes everything. And so this really costs like $32 or something on Amazon. I'm using a brand called Krups, K-R-U-P-S. I've had this is a new one because I wanted a nice one for the video. But I have like one that is like really beat up and that you can see all the oils from the herbs are in here and it's kind of looking yucky. I had it for years and I use it really often. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna basically use a half a teaspoon, right, of every one of these herbs, and they all come in chunks, so none of them is powdered. And I encourage you not to buy powdered herbs just because powdered herbs lose their potency really quickly. The difference would be like when you buy something ground, you are exposing a lot of surface area of that herb, right? And it gets oxidized really quickly. Well, guess what? Oxidized herb is pretty useless. The reason why they smell is because those volatile oils are what the medicine is. So if I smell this, it's got a slight smell to it, but I'm gonna grind this up. And the same thing goes with any herbs that you use culinarily. It's gonna be, how everything just gets released. And that's where the medicine is. So then I'm gonna use black cohosh. I'm gonna do exactly the same thing of using half a teaspoon of black cohosh, which is a wonderful root, very popular in traditional Chinese medicine. And then I'm gonna use half a teaspoon of my Vitex berries for progesterone boosting. Almost every woman needs a little bit of a boost with progesterone. And even if you're taking progesterone, like a topical progesterone, to do Vitex is perfectly fine. And then we're gonna add a tiny bit of ginger. Again, I'm not using powdered ginger. I'm using ginger in a form of that's like in chunks. And you can also use fresh ginger for this particular concoction, but you wouldn't blend it in like that. All right. Next thing we're gonna do is just wanna give it a really good round. All right, since you're gonna be drinking it, you do want it to be finely ground. Typically, I will grind it for just a tiny bit longer because you really want it to be really nice and ground up. So I'm gonna be using my almond milk. Whoops. I'm gonna use my almond milk as the carrier for this. And the whole idea is that we're going to be infusing these herbs very quickly. You don't need a lot of time to do that. We're going to infuse these herbs into this almond milk. So all of this is going to go in here. So I'm going to make a double of this. So this can serve, this is basically for 2 servings. Okay. You can pre-make this ahead of time and use it later. That's perfectly fine. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on the stove while Cheryl, my assistant, is going to be watching it so we don't overboil it. And yeah, so we're going to put that in here. Okay. And let's say if you use that on the stove for about 10 to 15 minutes, right? So it's basically like what you're doing is you're infusing your own latte, right? It's quite a wonderful way of bringing in these healing herbs for times of hardship, when it comes to PMS and painful periods. So the other herbs that I didn't discuss, but I didn't put it in here, but you can easily do that, is for heavy periods, you can use all the same herbs that I've used with one additional type of herb. And those are the ones that contract the blood flow to the uterus. They're really powerful. They're quite amazing herbs. One of them is yarrow, something that you find is a very common herb. It's pretty much a weed. Every time you go on a hike, I'm sure you see these little white flowers. That's yarrow. And Shepherd's purse is another. If you just Google those two herbs, you find them. You probably realize you've past walked them so many times without paying much attention. They're quite wonderful, and both of them have an ability to contract or limit the amount of blood that's coming into the uterus. So you can do exactly the same thing. You can infuse those herbs into like the concoction that I'm making here right now, and still use all these other herbs like what I use: black cohosh, vitex, and creme bark. And you can skip creme bark if you don't have pain. Although a lot of women who do have heavy periods do have pain, then you might want to use that. Okay. So the second recipe I would love to show you today is our PMS Salve. The PMS Salve is in the book, and it can be found on page 350. It's right in here. So this is what we're going to be making. I want to make a modification of this recipe here for you. So just to give you something a little bit extra for this video. And what we're going to be, so the base recipe is we're going to be using beeswax. Beeswax can come in the form of chunks like this, but it's probably better when you chop them up before melting them. I like to use beeswax that comes in pellets. So those are tiny little pieces that just melt really quickly. And then we're going to be using a carrier oil, in which case I'm using castor oil. I'm using castor oil for my friend Queen of Thrones, which comes in a glass bottles. I really like oils in glass bottles. Not everybody sells them that way because it's expensive to ship them, but that's my favorite option. And then we're going to be, and the reason why we're using castor oil, by the way, you can use any other form of oil. You can use jojoba, you can use almond oil, you can use olive oil, any nice organic oil would work for this recipe. So if you don't have castor oil right now at home, don't worry about it. If you want to make this, just go ahead and do. The reason why I'm using castor oil is because castor oil is the deepest penetrating oil through the skin, right? And the deeper you can penetrate, especially when we talk about having PMS and applying this topically, you're going to be working on a uterus. So you want this salve to get through the skin and get to the lymphatic system and be delivered to your uterus as quickly as possible. So this is what I love about castor oil, okay? And then we're also going to be using an infused oil from St. John's wort. I've got this prepared already. That's something you don't want to be doing at home by yourself unless you have access to fresh St. John's wort. This is one of those herbs that you want to infuse a fresh flower into the oil. Using dry just completely takes away all the anti-inflammatory properties. So here's an interesting thing about you guys about St. John's wort. A lot of you know it as being an antidepressant, right? And it's true, it can be when taken internally. But like with a lot of herbs, it's not just one benefit that it offers. We like to pigeonhole things and going like, oh, it's just this herb is for this and this herb is for that. The truth is that most herbs have so many different constituents, and these constituents work on a whole variety of different ailments. So one of the amazing things about St. John's wort is that it's highly, highly anti-inflammatory. And so it can be used on any skin conditions like eczema, psoriasis. It can be used for any cuts. But also when you talk about the uterus, the reason why we have PMS, the reason why we do have that pain is because of the contractions, the constant contractions of the uterus. So the more you relax the uterus and the more you can bring the inflammation down in the uterus, the more of a pain relieving quality the salve is going to have, okay? So and then we are using 2 essential oils. We're going to be using clary sage and lavender we're going to be putting into this recipe. There is a really great study that showed that 70% of PMS pain was gone, and it was almost adequate with almost the same result as a painkiller given to young girls managing PMS. It was just really quite fascinating. The third oil they used in there was rose. But because rose is a really expensive oil, that's why I didn't put it in the recipe. A little bottle of rose oil like this should cost you about $50 to $70. If you scored one for $5, let me tell you it's a fake one. And you shouldn't be buying it. It's not going to do anything for you. Now, the way I'm going to modify this recipe is we're going to use magnesium. I want to add magnesium to this recipe. So this is something a little extra I'm giving you that we don't have that in the book. I'm using topical magnesium. It's called Quick Magnesium. That's found in our store on wellena.com. And the reason why I'm using magnesium is because magnesium is an incredibly relaxing compound, right? And so remember when I was talking about the uterus, the reason why you have pain in the uterus is because of the constant contractions. That's what hurts. So when you put magnesium in, on top of all this anti-inflammatory, deep penetrating salve, you're just relaxing the uterus even more so. All right, enough of talking, let's get going. So I'm gonna move this book away. Now, I've already started on my, whoops,
I was not thinking.
Yeah, happened. So, we've got an overflow. Can you see the steam going? Nothing better than a good adventure in the kitchen. All right, so I've already started on my wax. I am going to use half of what the recipe is asking for, just because I don't have PMSs anymore. So I just don't want to waste the product. And just half, I just made it this morning as a little experiment. Half is going to give you this amount, right? So if you double that, that gives you basically a full jar. So, you know, and whenever, feel free to always modify recipes. It's there for you to experiment on them. There's nothing is set in stone. So, you know, always remember that. So let's, so what I started doing already is I started melting my, my wax already. And you can see there is, I need to hit it up a little bit more again. So the first thing you want to do always, and that's described in the recipe, is we want to melt the wax first and then proceed on to be putting the oils and start layering things in. And you always want to put the essential oils right at the end of the process. So as the wax is melting quite nicely, what I'm going to then do is, the actual recipe is calling for 1/4 cup of organic cold-pressed hexane-free castor oil. And in case you're coming late, I'm using it from my friend, or Dr. Marisol. She's coming in a couple of days. Actually, we're going to be talking about using castor oil for fibroids, you guys. That's going to be an interesting one, I think. And so half of 1/4 cup is 2 tablespoons. So 1/4 cup is 4 tablespoons. I'm using half of that, so it's 2 tablespoons. So let's do that. Now, who here has made your own salve before? I'm curious. As this is warming up, I'm gonna do a little quiz. So the quiz is, the question for the quiz for the book giveaway is, what is the benefit of using castor oil? Why am I using castor oil as the delivery oil, as a carrier oil for this particular salve? Okay, the next thing that the recipe is asking for 1/4 cup of St. John's wort infused olive oil. So what I'm gonna do is, again, I'm gonna be using 2 tablespoons. And I don't know if you can see this, but it's a beautiful brownish, reddish color. And you only get that when you're using a fresh flower in St. John's wort. It's another weed, which is really interesting. How many weeds are actually super medicinal? Quite fascinating. And then when you put things in together first, I know it's hard for you to see this right now, but when we first put things together, they kind of look clumped up and lumpy. And can you see I'm using a double boiler as well? Just note that, right? I'm using a double boiler because you don't want to apply direct heat to these oils. You can easily burn them. So we're just being really careful. And double boiler is a lot more forgiving and gentle. All right, the next thing I'm gonna do is, remember I told you I was gonna do something special, and so we're putting that magnesium in here as well. So I'm just gonna be using the same proportions, and I'm gonna go with 2 tablespoons. So you can see it's like a gel-like, it almost looks like aloe vera, but it's not aloe vera. This, how many of you here have been maybe to Israel or Jordan at the Dead Sea? It's quite an amazing place where people go and spend like 2 weeks and then come out and say, My heart arrhythmia is gone. My skin conditions are healed. I feel amazing. I can sleep again. And all they do is just soak the whole day. And it's quite amazing because you float. Like even if you can't swim, you just float in that thing because the saturation of the salt is so high, it pushes you out. So it's really wonderful. And so part of it is probably because you're going on a vacation to a place like that. But the other reason is because Dead Sea is full of exactly what I'm putting in here, and that's magnesium. It also got a lot of other trace minerals in it. The magnesium chloride is one of the main compounds that is found in the Dead Sea. And so no wonder people are feeling so relaxed and rejuvenated. They get overload of magnesium. They sleep so much better. Helps them with the cardiovascular health, and reduces a lot of the pains and aches, which is related to magnesium deficiency. Okay, so we've got this in a pretty good shape. And what I'm gonna then do is I'm gonna pour it into my little container so you can see what the consistency is like. Let me sure. Now, did you know that I have not put the essential oils in yet? And you don't wanna do that until you cool it off just a tiny bit. So I want to make sure, and I have a cloth, the one over there. Just want to make sure we don't want to get. Now, who can tell me why am I not putting a cover? Thank you. Why am I not putting a cover on top of this concoction here? Who knows why I'm not putting a cover? And I want to make sure I don't forget to tell you. The reason why I don't is because I don't want any water in the solution. A salve is always wax and oil based, and it's not a cream, it's not a lotion, so you don't want any water in. When you put water, when water gets in, it will go bad. Okay, so here we go. And that is your salve. I mean, how long did that take, right? So the thing about a salve is that what we want to make sure is that it cools off where you can still, where it's still got some level of liquidity in it for us to put the essential oils in, but right now is a little bit too hot. So we're going to wash this, and just before it kind of sets too much, I'm going to stir in the oils. All right. So I want to show you what we did with our latte. So for those of you who are joining a little bit late, I was showing you how to make a latte that's infused with different herbs that can help your PMS. It can help also how to modify this latte to make it for heavy periods as well using, here we go. So that's basically, it's a little hot, so I'm a little bit, let me see. You might add a little bit, tiny bit of sweetener to it, not too much, right? Just this way you would with a latte. But it's just a wonderful drink to sip on, and just a really great way of putting those herbs in here without just popping a pill. So just another way of delivering herbs into your life. So as I'm watching this myself, on the other hand, the salve is beginning to set. And the way you know it is because I don't have another camera today, but you can see it's beginning to get whiter on the outside, and on the inside it's still liquid. So this is the time when we wanna put that in. And the original recipe, the full recipe, talks about 20 drops of clary sage. So since I'm using half, we're just gonna do 10. Yep, just about 11, that's fine. It's got a nice smell to it too. And then 10 drops of lavender, so I'm gonna do about 5. Okay. And might be a little bit hard. Let me use a spoon. And this is really where we wanna blend it in. Who wants to tell me why you don't want to put essential oils into a hot oil like that? And when you guys are thinking or responding to this, the answer is that heat is going to evaporate the volatile oils, and a big part of essential oils is the volatile oils. and they will evaporate when you put them into a hot solution, a hot oil, okay? So that's it. So we've got our little demo for today. And as you can see, this is already setting. It's whitish in color. It's beginning to, it's gonna be basically, let me show you the consistency of the final product. Let me just, where did I put my, oh, there we go. So the final product will look like this, right? And, you know, you basically, if you don't like, if your kitchen is, if your bathroom is very cold, then what you might want to do is put a little bit less wax, and that way it's gonna be a softer solution. This one is quite hardy, and so it absorbs fairly quickly, which is another thing I like. And you'll see that in about a couple of minutes, it's gonna be pretty much gone. I typically, if I do use that solution, I haven't had a PMS in a while, but if I do, and it's typically when I don't behave myself and I get inflamed and estrogen dominance really kicks in, then I get PMS. Then I will do it at night and then just wear sort of a, old PJs that you don't want to be stained, and that's just really wonderful, quick solution. All right, well, let's see what questions we have coming in. Okay. Okay, so let me take a look at the question. So Mandy's saying, is there a preferred sweetener to the latte? Is stevia or monk fruit okay, or is the honey or maple syrup better? Yeah, that's a great question. So you can definitely do stevia or monk fruit. I personally don't like stevia, the taste of it, but I don't mind monk fruit. Especially if you're diabetic and you're really reducing your sugar intake, then those are really good ones. Honey maple syrup are really wonderful too. My favorite form of sugar is actually coconut nectar, because it's very low in fructose, fructose is what gets processed in the liver. So that's sweeteners like agave. Please throw away those. If you're still using agave, it's kind of like a big marketing spiel that they did, and it's a bit of a scam, really. Because it's really not a very healthy sweetener. So honey and maple syrup are fine if you're okay with a bit of sugar, which I think is perfectly fine if you are like not doing a candida cleanse or something like that. Alex Winner is saying, did you strain the latte? Yeah, that's a great question. So you can, but I don't mind actually drinking it with the herbs in that. So I didn't strain mine. It will have a little bit of like that, powdery texture to it, but I feel like that's perfectly fine too. Okay, Jean, let's pop up another question. Jean, do we have any other questions that you wanna? I see a lot of notes. I can see you guys have a lot of comments that are coming in. So who here is gonna? Somebody who's a Facebook user, I don't see their name, says, I love it, can't wait to try it. So how many of you here are gonna try? And what are you gonna try? You're gonna try the latte, or you're gonna try? Dorothy Wyszynski is saying, I'm making this. Which one are you gonna make, the latte or the salve? Okay, so that's all we have for today. In the afternoon, we've got another video coming up with Dr. Sean Tasson. We're gonna be talking about a really important topic of testing, hormone testing, blood testing, Dutch. He's a real great expert on Dutch. And so this is why I really want him to come on. He's been having some technical difficulties of landing in Denver because we are just about to have a snowstorm here. But I'm told that he is on the way. So I'm crossing my fingers and toes that he's gonna come on with us. So if you're interested in testing, blood testing, Dutch testing, urine testing, saliva testing for hormones, he's the go-to guru on that. All right, thanks everybody, and I will see you on our next video in just a couple of hours.